sure. Congratulations.
Thanks, yeah. Nice sentence. You got the pessary out? You got the pessary out, I hope. Oh, thank you.
Yes, there we go.
Oh, isn't that fantastic?
Yep.
Well, thank you. Well, that's a very nice thing.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to get a picture.
okay.
Okay. Dr. Zimmerman, and just get away from the, hope there's no glare from the head.
When-
No.
A little bit too much glare there. That's probably pretty good. There we go.
All right. Great.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Jill. In preparing for this, I did a little research and a background, but I came across a story I'd like to start off with today, and I thought it was a little amusing. A guy named Joe was leaving the hospital, and there had been a lot of construction, and we had a tough winter, and unfortunately, Joe fell down a hole. And Joe tried to get out of the hole, but he just couldn't get it, so he yelled out for help. And one of the interns came out of the hospital and says, "What's the matter?" He says, "I'm stuck in the hole, I'm stuck in the hole." So the intern promptly took out his prescription pad, wrote a prescription, and tossed it down the hole, and walked on his way. Then a few minutes later, that wasn't working. A priest walks by, and the priest looks at the hole and hears Joe screaming and says, "What's the matter?" "Father." "Yes, my son, I can't get out of the hole." "Oh, no problem." And he wrote him a prayer, personal prayer, tossed it down the hole. A few minutes later, he's still in the hole. And then he listens to the top saying, "Help, help," and his friend Irving's walking by. Irving says, "Joe, what's the matter?" He said, "I fell down the hole," and before he could do anything, Irving jumps down the hole. So Joe shook and said, "What are you doing down the bottom of the hole? Now we're both stuck down here." And then Irving said, "But one thing, I've been here before and I know the way out." Well, I thought about that for a bit, and we'll come back to that in a second, because it's an honor and a privilege to learn I was to receive the Irving Beck Laureate Award. It's a personal honor because I, unlike my colleagues, did get a chance to work with Irving. A few of his colleagues who work with him are still here. And my interaction with him was when he was a patient in the Jane Brown. I was a junior resident then. Now, those who don't know, junior resident's a lot easier than an intern. You have a lot more free time than you did when the interns are doing the scout work now. And I was trying to pass the time away, and one of my friends said, "Well, Dr. Beck's in the hospital. Why don't you go talk to him while you're waiting for the next page to come in?" So I went to the bedside the first time I met the gentleman, and he was very talkative. And he pretty much talked my ear off. He was, and for 2 nights we would chat. And there were some take-home messages from those conversations that I carry back to this day. He said to me, he imparted upon me, he looked at me as a very young physician, it was 1978, and he said, "General internal medicine is the noblest of all specialties." And he said, "You know, Dr. Carnevale," he always called me Dr. Carnevale, he was never Bob, it would require a diversified knowledge base of both medical and non-medical. You need an empathy for your patients and their families as well, and you have to be aware of the latest management of the disease. And it's going to require the development of a second sense of whether a patient's healthy or well, or if they're happy or sad. He also said that society, by virtue of my degree, had imparted me with the ability to do almost anything to a patient, but it carried with it a responsibility. He would say, the decision has to be intellectually sound, sympathetic to the fears of the patient and his family, and be prepared to take the patient to the solution of his problem, no matter how long it took. 2 days later, he was discharged, and I never saw the man again. And I went on with my life until I heard about the award. So I said, now I have a little time. I can actually learn why was he so special. Those conversations were great, and I took them to heart, but what was so special of him? And I found out he was quite special. I got a chance to talk to his daughters, who are both here, Barbara and Louise. Would you like to stand up? Who were nice enough to bare their souls and tell me about their dad and what it was like growing up to be a doctor's daughter. And their uncle Aaron is a psychiatrist and into behavioral health in Philadelphia. And at age 90, he is still practicing. So I have a chance to talk to him and learn about him. But the greatest stories I've heard was the people in the community. Several of you were nice enough to talk to me about Dr. Beck and fill me in about what he was like at the time. And he's been called a genius, a medical scholar without equal, a medical library without equal. His texts and medicines were valuable. He had Beaumont Stomach's original presentation in his library, and he was very proud of that. He also was a world traveler. He served in Burma during the Second World War and took care of not Americans, but Chinese who were abused by the Japanese. He got to travel in Southeast Asia in those days and served our country well as a hero in those days. And so he could be both an international physician and he can also be a local physician. As someone tells the story of how he was making a house call, and as he was walking out of the house call, a man grabbed him on the way out the door and said, "See my son, quick." Dr. Beck said, "I don't know you, but I'll be glad to see him." And his son was on the sidewalk, frozen in position. He couldn't move. So Dr. Beck examined the patient and said to his father, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but your son has polio and has to go to the hospital right now." Well, that son who had polio ended up going to the hospital and getting better. And years later, he went on to a medical school, and years later, he went to join Dr. Beck in practice and was as one of his partners. We talk a lot about being a physician's physician. He was a physician's physician in Rhode Island. If you were a doctor and your wife or your family had to go to someone, you'd go to see Dr. Beck. But his busy practice did not prevent him from contributing to the science of medicine. He was the first person to describe adverse effects of methylphenidate on the retroperitoneum. His medical reputation spread up and down the East Coast. He was honored at many universities as a scholar and as an example for others, and a good teacher. So he was actually the president of this organization for some time, and he was instrumental in forming a society I never knew existed called the American Oslerian Society for truly academic physicians. No one in Rhode Island is in that society now that I know of, but Irving served as president. So I'm both honored and humbled to receive this award. He memorializes a glorious physician. Compounding the issue, compounding the honor, though, is I get to stand next to other people who have been singled out by the college as laureates in this man's name. To look at the list of men who have had this, men and women who have had this award before, I'm awed by their presence, and I think I'm going to be spending the rest of my life being proud to be a member of that august group of physicians. And thank you for the Rhode Island chapter for letting me do this. And back to Irving. I'd like to thank Aunt Irving for being there before us and showing us the way up. Okay? Was it good?
You did good. Done good. Got it?
Yep, thank you.
I love the goodness. It's a So one of the great pleasures that our next incoming governor, Audrey Cupton, is in the back. Audrey, could you stand up? If you don't know
Thanks.
Audrey,
I didn't fall.
if you don't know Audrey, please catch up with her when she takes over next year as governor, is being able to bestow a
How'd we go?
governor's award. So the governor's award is given
Okay.
just from time to time at the pleasure of the governor for someone who has been is particularly admired and respected by colleagues, but has also provided distinguished service to the chapter and to the Rhode Island community. Mark Braun, would you please come forward? Mark Braun, Dr. Braun has been very active in the Rhode Island chapter, longer than I have been involved with it. He went to University of Pennsylvania and then Hahnemann Medical School. He did his internal medicine training